Welcome, and thank you for attending this session at the Scottish Summit 2021. My name is Dennis Torres. I'll talk about Power BI data flows, going beyond the self-service. Let's first thank our sponsors. Without the sponsors, this conference would not be happening. So thank you very much to them. And this is me. I'm a data platform MVP, work at Betson, and you have my contacts here at this side. You can see my contacts here. Feel free to connect. It will be a pleasure to connect and ask any question you would like. A picture talks more than 1,000 words, so some pictures about me, things that I like to do. And the agenda today. We'll talk about the first concepts of data flows, the data warehouse ecosystem, the Power BI ETL problem. Yes, because there is an ETL problem. Once we are talking about the data flow is to solve one existing problem. How data flow works, on-premise data gateway, and demonstrations. Many demonstrations. So, data flow first concepts. Let's talk about the data flows. It's an additional Power BI ETL solution. One more Power BI ETL solution. But it's based on Power Query, so you don't need to think, oh, I need to learn a new language. No. Forget it. It's based on Power Query. It works only in the portal, not in the desktop. It doesn't work on Power BI desktop, only in the portal. And solve Power BI ETL problem. What problem? We will discover what problem in a few minutes. What we already know about Power BI. We know that Power BI is a self-service solution. This means that it's built to allow every user in the company, every business user in the company to get data from many different data sources and build their dashboards. It's a self-service solution. But we also know that Power BI needs a data warehouse behind the scenes. Maybe some of you may not totally agree with that. So I need to explain further why Power BI needs a data warehouse behind the scenes. A self-service can't work alone? No. Let's see why. Imagine we have a big enterprise, a worldwide company with many branches in many different countries. What would happen if each of these branches start to build their dashboards, their reports using different sources of data provided by themselves? What would happen? This would be the result. You can imagine this organization of your data. You can imagine how your data would be like this. Worse than that. Is anyone attending this session suffering of this environment? This may happen. So what's the consequence on this? We have duplicated work. People will be doing lots and lots of duplicated work, and you have data that is not trustworthy. Different reports that should be showing the same numbers will have different numbers, and no one will be able to explain why those reports have different numbers. What is the correct report when the truth is that both reports are correct, but they have different point of views, and no one knows about this point of views. This is a problem in this scenario. And how do we solve this problem? We solve this problem by using a data warehouse, an enterprise data warehouse, as a backend for the self-service solution. So Power BI gets the data mostly from a data warehouse. Many pieces of the data warehouse in the enterprise. So the self-service of Power BI is still needed, of course. very needed, because the users will get data from different pieces of the data warehouse and even from outside the company. They will merge the data with information from outside the company. So Power BI is still a self-service, but it needs a back-end solution, an enterprise data warehouse, to ensure the trustworthiness of the data. So let's talk a bit about the data warehouse ecosystem. This is a traditional data warehouse ecosystem. We have data source, then we use these ETLs, transformations, to prepare the data and save the data inside the data warehouse. From the data warehouse, we start to build data models. These data models will be easier for the user to understand and extract reports. And the reports can be extracted from the data models or from the data warehouse, any one of them. And how Power BI fits on this? Power BI gets the task to build the data models and build the reporting and analysis solution. So Power BI is capable to replace the data models and replace reporting tools. But the data warehouse is still an enterprise solution. Power BI still needs the data warehouse as a source of data. Otherwise, you end up with a complete mess in your enterprise environment. However, the subject of this session is data flows, and the Power BI data flows are a new ETL solution. But we already have an ETL solution here. What's the difference? Well, now we will have two. So we have an enterprise ETL. The purpose of this enterprise ETL that you see there is to fill the data warehouse. There are many rules that this enterprise ETL will follow to fill the data warehouse. Data warehouse rules. While we also have the self-service ETL here. So the self-service ETL is the Power BI ETL that will be used to capture data from different pieces of the data warehouse, from data models, from different data models provided by the data warehouse, from outside the company to merge and give context to this information, and so on. So we still need the self-service ETL, and the purpose of this self-service ETL is to reach the final result, the reporting and analysis. So these are different purposes. The enterprise ETL has the purpose to fill the data warehouse, while the self-service ETL has the purpose to generate the reports. When you dig deeper on this, you even will notice that the rules applied for each one are completely different. These are completely different rules. And let's talk about the Power BI ETL problem. As I said, there is a problem. What's the problem? What's the Power BI ETL problem? When you build something with Power BI, we are building PBIX files. Like here, we have two files. And we have a file sales PBIX and we have the inventory PBIX. But we need to build our model inside these files. Then we build the data dimension inside these files, and the data dimension will be duplicated. Because we will need the data dimension for the sales PBIX, and we will need the data dimension for the inventory PBIX. So the data dimension will be duplicated among these files. This is double work, and we are losing money, time, and so on. This is not good. Not good at all. And that's the Power BI ETL problem. It even makes more difficult to make teamwork because the teams have difficult to share what they produce with other teams. And then comes the Power BI data flows to improve teamwork in an enterprise level. Power BI dataflow is an essential piece of feature in Power BI to transform Power BI from a simple self-service tool to an enterprise level tool. Let's see how it does that. So I said the data flows would be built inside the portal. So the idea in relation to the previous example is that the data dimension would be built in a data flow inside the portal. On the PBIX files, the developers could consume the data dimension. The data dimension is already produced there. So two different developers would share the work already created that generated the data dimension. So we will have a reuse of work, and we will have a better teamwork during the development of the Power BI. And how the data flows work. Let's get into some more details. Only available in app workspaces. We can't create a data flow on my workspace. It doesn't work. It is only available in app workspace. Each data flow can have many entities. We can include many entities inside the data flow. Each data flow can have many data sources. So the entities in a data flow don't need to be from the same source. They can come from different sources. And one data flow can use another data flow as a source. This is especially powerful because it allows us to create a complete hierarchy of data flows. How will be the result? Imagine this. We have the data source. In this case, the data source on this graphic, the data source that you are seeing on that side, in this graphic, are data warehouse and cubes and data models. So it's not a production data source. They are not production data sources. They are data warehouse and cubes. And on the workspace, we build data flows. We build data flows to consume these data sources. And the workspace, the different workspace, plays an important role in this scenario because each workspace can be a different department in an enterprise, a different branch in an enterprise. So we are talking about departments sharing information between them, across them, branches sharing information across them through the data flows. And we still need the data sets because the data flow is the ETL. The ETL part of the work, what we build with Power Query. But after the ETL, we still need to configure the model, configure the tables, configure the relationships, and so on. And this configuration, this model configuration, are the datasets. So we still need to build the dataset. We'll see the dataset in the portal, and these datasets can consume information from different workspaces. Again, we are seeing departments and branches consuming data from each other. And finally, reports and dashboards consuming the dataset to show the result of the analysis and the information. Basic features for the enterprise. I'm talking that data flow is an essential feature turning Power BI from a simple self-service tool to an enterprise level self-service tool. But there are other features playing a good role on this transformation. Reusability and teamwork. This is a result of the data flows. The data flows are bringing this to us. endorsement. This is a very interesting feature inside Power BI environment. And data lineage. Data lineage is essential exactly to prevent that mess that we just saw on a previous slide. We need to know where the data comes from. We need to know how the data was generated, where it comes from. That's what we mean when we talk about data lineage. Before going to the demonstrations, let's talk about on-premise data gateway. Why? Well, because it's very usual that we will need to connect from the portal to the on-premise environment, to on-premise servers. This is very common. So let's talk a bit about the on-premise data gateway, which is used for that. It's a software provided by Microsoft. We install this software on our on-premise environment, and the gateway provides exactly this task, a gateway to data sources inside the on-premise environment. And about the security. This drawing here is showing that the gateway uses the Azure Service Bus. You don't need to care about this. This is talking about the internals of the gateway. You don't need to care too much about this. But what is important here in relation to this, in relation to the gateway using the service bus, is how safe the gateway is. Because the service bus introduced a very safe technique for applications in the cloud to access information inside the company on premise. Azure Service Bus has a very safe solution for that. The gateway is installed as a service. It's not an application that will stay open in your environment. It's a service. It will appear as a service in the Windows service list, as a list of services. But we don't configure the gateway on the on-premise environment. We configure the gateway through the portal. So we need to go to the portal to make the gateway configuration. So in the portal, we can add gateways, we can add data sources, and what is most interesting from this is that we can create a hierarchy of responsibilities inside this configuration. Why? Because we will have a main administrator of the Power BI environment. This main administrator will be responsible to add the gateways to the Power BI environment. But this guy can delegate the gateway management to other users. So other users can be responsible for managing the gateway. And each gateway manager can delegate the access to the data source on that gateway to specific users. So specific users can access the data source on that gateway, even without not even knowing the password to the data source. I will demonstrate that. So who knows the password here? Who is managing the gateway? The developers don't need to know the password for the gateway. Here you see the definition of the users who will be able to access one data source, in this example related to the data source. Let's see a demonstration of all these that I just talked about. So, here we are seeing the on-premise data gateway open on my machine only for the purpose of demonstration. I'm showing it open. But it doesn't need to be open like this. It's a service. It's inside Windows service. In my machine, I have a virtual machine called WorkVM. And here in the WorkVM, I have some database. And I use the database Adventure Works 2016. I'll use this database in our data flows in the cloud. Okay, that's great. Let me open the site. So here is my Power BI environment, and I can check the gateway configuration. Here in the portal, not in the client application, in the portal, I have the option Settings, Manage Gateways. So I manage the gateways in the portal. So we are seeing my gateway and connections that my gateway has. My gateway has a connection with Adventure Works and a connection with Adventure Works DW 2016. It's interesting that on the gateway level, I can specify administrators for the gateway because I can have many gateways and delegate the administration of these gateways. And in the connection level, I can specify the users who will be able to access these connections, to use these connections to get data and build data flows, datasets, reports, and so on. So here is the gateway. I can test connections. It takes a while to connect to my on-premise environment and tell that everything is absolutely okay. Okay, let's go ahead. I need a workspace. As I explained it, I can't create a data flow in my workspace. It may even trick us talking about data flows, but if I try to create something, I can't create a data flow in my workspace. I need to create a new workspace. So in Workspace, I'll select Create a Workspace, and I'll call the workspace as Scottish Summit. Save. Here is my workspace. So in my custom workspace, I will start to create the data flows. Let's go directly to New Data Flow. I have 4 different options to choose. Let's analyze one by one during the session, but I will start with the Define New Entities. Define New Entities is the basic one that allows me to create a data flow getting an entity from a data source. That is it. So add new entity, and I need to choose from what kind of data source I want to get the data. It's a SQL Server. What's the name of the server? My virtual machine is called WorkVM. I'm typing the name of my virtual machine in the Power BI portal. Yes, I am. And the database is Adventure. Mind what happens while I'm typing. Adventure Works DW 2016. What happened while I was typing? The portal was checking with the gateways if there was a connection for this server with this database. It found the connection and it brought to me the authentication information for this connection. Now I have the hat of a developer. I'm a developer using the connection established through the gateway, and I don't need to know this password. Power BI brought to me the authentication password. I don't need to know it. Okay, so here I'm seeing the tables that I have on my on-premise environment. Let's choose 2 of them. I choose customer and product. two of the tables. So I'm creating a data flow with two entities. This data flow will have two entities generated from the data flow. You have Power Query in the cloud. I can make transformations here exactly as I can do in Power Query. For example, let's choose some columns and remove. I'll choose the columns made for translation and remove them. I don't need them. Then I come to remove columns and remove columns. According to the task that I execute, I see the steps being recorded here. And that's exactly like Power Query. I can rename the entities. Instead of the name of the table, I'll call the entities as customer and product. Save and close. I have a data flow with two entities. I'm seeing in the background, here on the background, I'm seeing the two entities, customer and product. And I'll give a name for the data flow. Let's call customer product flow. This will be the name of my data flow. Save. It already offers to me to refresh the data flow. I can choose here to refresh the data flow, but let's take a look on the Workspace, and I see my data flow with the options to schedule the refresh or refresh now. Let's choose to refresh now. So it's refreshing this data flow. So you saw that we have now Power Query in the cloud to create the data flows. But will you be comfortable with the development in a browser? Will this development inside the browser have all the same features of Power Query? Well, maybe you prefer to develop on the desktop. It's possible that you have this preference. And here I have my entities, including the entity in geography. Now, let's get the query for this in geography. I created in Power Query, so I can use the view, advanced editor, and I'm seeing the M code used to build this query. So I'll copy this M code, copy this code. Now I'll go to the portal and I'll create a new data flow. Define new entities. Instead of choosing SQL Server, for example, I'll choose blank and select blank query because I have the M code. So I'll paste the query here. AdventWorks, DW 2016. I need to ensure the letters are in the same case. And I choose the gateway, SQL Set Gateway. Next. Oh, but it's still asking me to configure the connection. There is something strange here. Let's click this button and then magically the credential comes already filled. It's out there. It's already filled there. Why? Because the portal identified the name of the connection and the database in the gateway. So since I have access to this connection, it brought to me the authentication. And again, I don't need to know the exact authentication is being used here. I'm a developer. I don't need to know. Let's call this entity geography and use the save and close. Validating queries. The geography is the name of the entity. Let's give a name for the data flow. Geography flow is the name of the data flow. Save. Again, it suggests me to refresh. Let's use this option now, refresh. I'll go back to the Scottish Summit, the workspace. And now I have two data flows, one with two entities and one with a single entity. One created by the UI in the portal, the other created using M language. So I have these two data flows. But let's imagine now that I want to make joins between the information of customer and the geography. I want to make analysis about where the customer lives. So I need to join these two informations. Let's create a new data flow for that. A new data flow. And that's where we get the second option. Link entities from other data flows. So we add linked entities. So I'm adding linked entity. I'm already signed in. So I just click next. And Power BI is listing to me all the workspace I have access to. This is more important than you imagine, because imagine a real scenario. Imagine that each one of these workspaces could be a department in your company. Each one of these workspaces could be a branch of your company. So we are talking about sharing information across departments and branches. That's it. I'll get the information only from the Scotch Summit workspace. On the customer product flow, I'll get only the customer. I don't need to get the product. I'll get only the customer. And on the geography flow, I'll get the geography. And then I will transform data. So I have here the entities, customer and geography, and they have a different icon. Let me update the geography, and they have a different icon because this icon means linked entities. These entities are coming from a different workflow. I'm linking two workflows. So from these entities, I'll make a merge queries because I would like to join the information from customers to geography. So I'll make a merge queries as a new entity. So customer and geography, I'll merge them by geography key. Okay. It's bringing me the result. And here at the end, as a last column, I have the geography, a reference to the geography table. It's exactly the same result I would get from Power Query on-premise on the desktop. So I will expand this geography and choose the fields that I would like. I would like city. I don't need the state province code. I need the name, country. I don't need the postal code. So these are the fields that I would like to have. And then I change the name of the entity. Let's call this entity customer Jill. And save and close. Validating queries. That's it. So I need to give a name for the data flow. And this will be called customer Jill flow. Let's use this name, customer Jill flow. Save. However, the portal is already giving us the bad news. What bad news the portal is giving to us? The portal is giving to us the news that we can only refresh this information if we have a premium subscription. Using the regular Pro subscription, we can't use linked entities. This is a premium only feature. This is bad. This is very disappointing because it gives us the idea that we can only make the hierarchy of data flows that I talked about if we use the premium subscription, which is more expensive. But that's not true. Let's see the solution for this. But before I show the solution for this, let's see another feature. Yes, I want to save changes. So I have here my customer Jill flow, and here on the menu I have the option lineage. Let's take a look on the lineage of the customer Jill flow. So it brings me the source of the information. It's showing that the customer Jill flow is using information from customer product flow and geography flow. And these two use information from SQL Server from one specific gateway and is telling me the server and database where the information is coming from. This is very important in an enterprise environment. Why this is so important in an enterprise environment? Because we need to avoid that mess that I showed to you in a previous slide. That mess needs to be avoided. And by building lineage graphics like this, we can avoid that mess. We can avoid that. So this is a very important feature. But we still can't process this data flow. There is something wrong with this data flow. We can't process it. So let's edit the data flow and discover the secret of this feature. I will edit these entities. Okay. And the secret is that I can't have linked entities. Well, but besides the premium problem, what I'm doing here is using the entities from other data flows to generate a new entity. Why would I like to expose these entities from the other data flow again? I don't have this need. What I need is the result of my data flow. And the result of my data flow is the customer Jill entity. The other entities I don't need. I use only to generate the result. So what can I do? I can right click these other entities and uncheck the option enable load. What I'm saying that I don't want to load this entity. And I'll do the same with the geography. I will uncheck the option enable load. So I don't want to load the geography entity. And since I'm not loading these two entities, I'm not using linked entities anymore. And by not using linked entities anymore, I can refresh this data flow. Refresh now. So now I'm allowed to refresh this data flow. And I can use this data flow from Power BI. Let's get here an open and empty Power BI environment. Use the option Get Data. And I have here the option Power BI Data Flows. Power BI Data Flows. Connecting. Again, it's showing me all the workspace that I have. It means all the departments of the company, all the branch of the company to which I have access to. So I can get information from different places in the company. But here I'll get only the customer due flow. Only that loads the data. And I have here the table customer due. So I can use the country name, geography country, and I can use the customer key, geography country to the X, and now I can see the total of customers that I have for each country. That's it. Let's publish this report. I need to save. Let's call it Scottish Summit Demo. Select the workspace. I will use my Scottish Summit workspace. It's publishing and it's done. So I can take a look in the portal, and on my workspace I'll see the data flows I created from the portal and the report and the dataset. One important feature to reuse the data across the company we can find on the settings of the data flow. I mentioned this feature is called endorsement. What this means? We will have many different branches of the company and many different departments of the company generating data for the entire enterprise. So the endorsement is a very important feature to control this data. First, the developer of the data can promote the data flow. When a developer promotes the data flow, it means that the developer is saying that the data is correct, the work is complete, and all the departments can consume that data. The developer is offering that data to other departments. This is one level of endorsement. The second level of endorsement is the certified. In this case, the company needs to define a team of people, a group of people that will be responsible to certify the data. So when the developer wants to certify the data, it will send a request for this group of people, for this team. This team will analyze the data to ensure that that data is correct, is perfectly correct, built correctly, and that data flow will be certified. So we have this feature to promote the data across the enterprise. And the users across the enterprise will be able to identify if one data source is reliable or not. On the other hand, I have shown the lineage feature before, but after I disable the load, this becomes a bit disappointing, because I have here the customer due flow. Since I already published a dataset in a report, I can see the report consuming the dataset and consuming the customer due flow. But the customer due flow is using two entities that are with the load disabled. The lineage feature in Power BI doesn't support the load disabled. And this is not something that we will do to prevent premium subscriptions. This is something that we'll do because we don't need those entities loaded. And it's really a problem that this is not supported. But Microsoft is working a powerful product called PureView that is able to work on the lineage of our data source across many Microsoft products, including Power BI. So it was to take a look on the PureView. So with this demonstration, we complete our presentation, and I leave you with my contacts. It will be a pleasure to connect. Feel free to keep in touch and ask me any question. And thank you very much for attending the Scotch Summit 2021. Thank you.